Hi, so today we have Zachary Flores, who is the founder of TOSunbound.com. It's a beautiful website that encapsulates so much material about the thoracic outlet syndrome, which many of us, many people suffer of it without knowing the diagnosis even. So thank you, Zachary, for joining and
Yeah, I'm happy to be on and talk about this because I think it's really important.
so they say there is nothing like a story with a happy end, and
Right,
I know that you have been able and you are still in the process of healing of
right.
this condition. So let's dive in.
hmm
Can you tell us your story, how it began?
So my story, it started with kind of what most people will refer to as carpal tunnel syndrome. That was the diagnosis that they gave me. Because I spent a lot of time on the computer. It was pretty much all I did. And if I wasn't doing that, maybe once every couple of weeks, I might go to the gym and do some heavy lifting, but I didn't know, what was the right and wrong thing to do at the gym. So, um, I was doing a lot of, bench press, things like that. And at the time, during this time, I didn't know any of that was kind of going to affect, make me have any kind of symptoms or cause any kind of pain. But the carpal tunnel, it kind of went on for um, I think it was 4 years or so, 4 or 5 years.
Wow.
They asked for, like, an EMG, and they wanted to do surgery,
Wow.
and I told them, "I'm so young, there has to be, like, a better solution for this, like, I have to, like, look around first before I'm gonna do something, you know, that invasive. I wanna, explore my other options." But I think being that I was young and I didn't necessarily know, um, how serious this was, I kinda thought, "Oh, I can just keep doing the same thing, maybe this will go away, um, later down the line." And so I started getting symptoms in my elbow and stuff too, and, um, I ended up getting to college and doing even more, coding and everything, and started doing like push-ups and like working out more. And it got to the point where even my bicep was like spasming and all kinds of, shoulder pain, neck pain, and like I couldn't even shave or open a door or anything. I couldn't. I was getting to be like pretty scared about what all this meant, down the line. I was like, is this going to be my future? Am I going to be like someone who's, not able to do anything anymore? I'm just kind of stuck.
So,
Um,
did you have pain or just the tingling and the needling?
I had like sharp pains, like almost like what some people refer to as like zingers. That's what I've heard it referred to as, like a sharp shooting pain, um, that kind of just goes all the way up and you feel it. When you move a certain way or you push a certain way that your body doesn't like.
Could you
Um, I
could you pinch and grip, or was it also
I would lose I would lose the ability to kind of like, have that fine tuning of the hand.
yeah,
I
fine,
couldn't I
fine motor?
Yeah, fine motor skills, yeah. Um, I wasn't really able to. I started to notice when I would use tools and stuff, my thumb just would not hold on to certain things. It would just kind of be very clumsy, I guess you could say. Um, and so yeah, I had that. I would have the numbness pretty much every night. Um, even
How
numbness,
about weakness of the hand? Was it
yeah. I tested my grip strength with my because I had a hand therapist I started seeing. And I think it was like less than 30 pounds, which is like almost half of what was normal for my age. And yeah, I've improved it since then, but I didn't actually, so for TOS, when I started to like look and do research, because I started saying, okay, I need to really find something that's going to be the solution to all this pain I'm having. I know it's not carpal tunnel syndrome now because I'm having all these symptoms in my arm. I was even having my leg fall asleep.
Mhm.
Um, and so I was like, there's got to be something else going on here. And so
And,
I started
and,
looking
and
around.
may I ask, how was your gait? The walking, did you also feel that the walking?
Oh yeah. So when I would try to walk to class, I would actually have to stop for a little bit because my leg would just go numb. It would just be weak. So I would actually have to stop and just like sit down and for like maybe 5 or 10 minutes. And then I'd have to get up and start walking again. And so being that I was at a campus, there was like a very big campus, it was like very difficult to get around and because that's what you have to do. You have to go from class to class and it can be like a mile or two to your next class in some cases. Um, so yeah, that was very difficult. And then I ended up going to a neurologist because I started looking like, okay, let me find somebody maybe that knows how to diagnose thoracic outlet syndrome. Maybe they can see that I have this, even though it's very rare. And so I found a neurologist, and she actually it looked like she had some symptoms of either like TOS or what have you, whatever you want to call it, like compression basically on the in the rib cage, because she had atrophy in her pinky. So she said it seemed like this was like her goal was to kind of help people in these situations. So
What
I came to her.
kind of an atrophy? She also suffered of TOS?
She had the ulnar nerve
Yeah.
symptoms. It seemed like primarily, so she had the atrophy in her pinky muscles here. Um, And so when she saw me, she said, maybe this is like, something like cubital tunnel. And then I was like, well, what about thoracic outlet syndrome? I said, I'm having this bicep, nerve problems too. That can't be like the same thing. This has all got to be connected. And so she was like, oh, that does definitely help us lean towards TOS. So after that, she referred me to a PT. Um, we started doing some stuff there. I didn't really feel like the stuff that I was doing at this PT was gonna like be the solution.
Okay.
Um, and I had the Discord going at this time, and it was mostly just like a lot of people coming in and out, kind of sharing what worked for them. And one of the people I'm really close to in the Discord, his name is Hammy. He told me, he's like, hey, I just started seeing this therapist in California. His name is Joe Cincinnati. And he told me about Bill Hartman. He said that he's kind of like he calls him the all father PT almost. He loves to like, um, say a lot of positive things about him. And so I'm like, okay, like this guy's right near me. I waited like, another month, maybe, I tried to do some stuff with like PRI, but I didn't feel like I liked a lot of things about PRI. Um, but I felt like I needed more direction, like maybe something that was a little more targeted, because a lot of what I was doing for PRI was stuff that was on the internet. It was just stuff I found on YouTube videos.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, it was not something that was like for me based on my body type, what I was dealing with.
Not
So
tailored.
I wanted something more individualized. So I went and did a 30-minute consultation with Bill. Um, and basically what he told me when he saw me, he was like, you're very compressed. He said, this is probably not going to be a slam dunk for you.
A to P, right?
Yep. A to P. Yep. And like very limited measures as far as like range of motion goes. Um, and so he's like, this isn't going to be necessarily, a quick fix for you, but, we can help you basically, he
Nice.
said.
Mhm.
Um, And so that's when he started me with Eric, because he said, Eric kind of fits better with my schedule. I wanted to see, I was at the time working 4 times a week. So and it was all the days that Bill worked, so I couldn't necessarily see him. So Eric was willing to stay a little bit later on Thursdays to do appointments with me. So we ended up doing that. And I think he's just been really good at like applying everything that Bill teaches. And I think it's been a very like awesome approach. Like I don't know that many, PTs would know, I guess, as much in terms of just like exercise sequencing and like, where the compression is and where it occurs and like the reverse engineering
Yes.
aspect of it. And then even the bridge to like performance, where we've started doing gym exercises, and I feel like those are really helping too. Because I think a lot of people, and this is in the Discord too, we have a lot of people who, when we talk about breathing exercises, they think, well, breathing exercises must be the solution. I've always said, well, breathing exercises might not be the solution, but they'll be the first step in the right direction. Because really, I think it's about like the lifestyle changes, and then also kind of what Bill will refer to as superimposing at the extremity, which is just you kind of untwisting. Like let's say you get rid of that A to P compression, and then now it's time to basically capture true internal rotation through the hand, because what you're really doing when you're at the computer all day long and you start to get that A to P compression, whether it be from like just sitting there or the pump handle down or
Sure.
like from breathing with your superficial muscles, or even just doing maybe a lot of compressive exercises like bench press, you're really just you're not actually accessing those spaces. You're just kind of reorienting certain things to get there. What
Yes.
some people will say is like cheating the range of motion. That's why you start getting the nerve pain and whatnot.
So
So go ahead.
I'm curious, what did you feel was the turning point? When did you start to see a shift towards healing?
Okay, so with the diagonal sit exercise, I think it was like maybe 4 weeks in, because this was to like kind of fix the leg stuff I was dealing with. I think maybe 4 or 5 weeks in, I already started to notice, hey, like, because I ended up going on a vacation like shortly after our first visit. Like I'm not really having that sharp shooting pain as much anymore in my toes when I kind of lift my toes. And if I did, it was like a very rare like occurrence. It started to become pretty rare, and that was pretty fast. I was like, okay, Bill said this was going to be something that took some time, but that was a pretty fast result. And then we started moving on to hook lying, and I felt like I started to be able to use my phone a lot more, because in the past I just avoided, using my phone pretty much at all because, unless it was just very brief instances because it was so painful.
Just for the sake of clarifying, the diagonal seat, you said, or you call
Yeah, the
it?
diagonal sit, and then I did hook line cross connect. So we sequenced diagonal sit, hook line cross connect, and then hip shift. So we did one where I was laying on my back, and I was doing a low reach. There's a low reaching activity, and then the whole purpose of this was to expand the back side of the rib cage to give space. Um,
uh, So it's
so
hook line with two hands in 60 degrees, something like this.
it's one. So it's when you get on your back and you just reach with the right side.
Will you be kind to show just to have the,
Yeah.
the diagonal and the what?
Okay, so diagonal is this exercise here, and then you put your hands right in front of you, and then you shift this hip back. You want to think about like what Eric tells me is like long leg. Think long leg is a cue.
Long
And then you
leg?
That's the cue that he gives me. Yeah, you think of that, and then you just kind of pull it back, and then you lift this leg just like a millimeter off the ground, and then you push with the heel of your hand. You look straight forward, and you try to breathe into the backside of the rib cage.
So what are you doing with the knees?
So this is the knee. You have it right in front of the hip, and you try to create an angle that is similar with both legs, but you keep the right one going back.
Yes. So the knees should push to the ground?
The right side should push back.
Oh.
It's like kind of like an in and back feeling almost.
So,
And you want to keep the contact with this inner knee here.
so
So
the right leg would be internal rotation?
yes, I believe so. It might be like more of a yielding. I'm not 100% sure on that. But if you can see what I'm doing from the back, I don't know. You can see here, there's kind of like a turn that
Yes.
gets created. So you're almost like kind of turning out of that leg, and this starts to become super active there.
Yeah, I
And
think
then
you are actually lengthening the whole right side.
right, yeah. So you're kind of like decompressing that whole right side of the pelvis area. And so it kind of makes sense why that would help the nerve compression. And then also I was told that, a lot of my hip measures improved. And I looked at my shoulder measures improved too.
The internal
After doing that.
The internal rotation of the shoulder.
I think it was external rotation that I got a lot back of first. Because that was my, if you're narrow, that's the thing you lose last. So if we're working backwards, that was what I kind of recaptured first, was that external rotation. But so I did that. I did the hook line cross connect stuff. But then we moved forward when I really started to notice like a big change. I would say that was when I started with I'll show you this exercise here. I refer to it as ninja hook line. It's a pump handle exercise to kind of turn off the rectus abs. So if you're ever having like anxiety or anything that's going to like cause you to tense up the abs,
Like
this exercise,
like trauma, like to
yeah,
cringe.
yeah, like you'll want to crunch, and a lot of exercises too. You'll kind of want to like brace the abs. This is the exercise that like targets that. So what you do, I don't know if you could see this here. See if I have enough room. You put this band right around your knees, below your knees here. Can you see that? I don't know.
I can.
Okay. And then you cross it, just like that. And then you take each band around your hand like this. And then you go overhead and you push the arms out. You find your right hip, right foot, left hip, left foot, and then you just kind of push with the arms and you try to inhale into the back. And you kind of let yourself expand into the ground and just keep pushing up. And that's like a really good exercise for
the
if
down.
you're dealing with that, for the down pump handle. And so a lot of times people with TOS, when they first do that, they'll say, well, I'm getting like some scaling tightness, or I'm getting some hand numbness from doing that. I got those symptoms too, but what I noticed is as I kept doing it, and if I kept trying to relax into that position, it would be less and less and less and less, to the point where now I don't have any kind of symptoms or anything doing that exercise. So I was like, okay, this is changing, obviously changing certain aspects about the way my body's behaving, in terms of like breathing and everything else. That was probably one of the biggest turnarounds. And then when I started doing lazy bear, which Bill talks a lot about getting narrows in a quadruped. I started doing some of that, and that helped a lot too.
Yeah.
So
the
because
program
that's
was built from supine and almost no gravity to building it to then quadruped.
right. And then we did quadruped, and then well, I mean, because we did try to get we tried doing we did like a sitting exercise where you do the band like this. I don't know if you've ever seen that. We did some of those. And then I remember at one point we tried to move to standing exercises, but I was having too much of the rectus abs. I always was like trying to crunch all the time. And sometimes I would be kind of shrugged up. And so that's when they gave me this banded hook lying exercise. And I noticed those changes. And then so we moved on to lazy bear, and I started to notice a pretty huge amount of symptom relief in that. Like I just started to notice my chest would expand more than I was used to. Like forward when I would breathe, I would just notice you could kind of feel it more. And Eric noticed
Forward and up.
like more up, yeah. And then after that, we started doing.
You do this. I'm stopping you because many narrows when they think about the sternum going forward and up in the inhale, they use the lower back. They use the rib flaring. So would you give what cue would you give to?
I definitely wouldn't give the cue to breathe into the chest. Like that's not that, because from my experience, that you're right, it doesn't really help. It's more of like if you notice that if you're thinking like the big back breathing, that's what we call it, me and Eric. It's like upper back big when you're doing the inhale, and then the chest part will come on its own. You don't ever want to cue for like an expansion in the chest. I definitely agree with that. I mean, at least as a narrow, I mean, maybe you do for wides or something else because I'm not sure in that part, but yeah, I don't ever like cue for that. But I did notice it. It definitely was like after I would do an exercise, if I do lazy bear, I would notice the difference. And then it only became more significant once I started doing the low oblique sit on my right side, which you mentioned previously. That I noticed some pretty big changes as well in terms of like I could sit at the computer longer. And so now I can probably sit at the computer for like a few hours and do stuff and have, be fine. I only start really having symptoms if I've been on there like, all day. So it's definitely been huge improvements ever since all these, sequences of exercises have kind of built up.
Zachary, you also mentioned the second exercise that they gave you was, sorry, the third drill was hip shifting. Could you show?
Oh yeah, hip shift. Yeah. So hip shift right here. You put a ball right here in between your knees. So it's kind of like that banded one, but you're just using this ball here, and you find your right. You always want to find your right hip first. And then after that, you'll find your right foot contacts. That's inner heel, base of the big toe. Then you'll find your left hip contact, inner heel, base of the big toe. And then you'll get heavy into your left side, and you'll reach like this, do a low reach. And then you'll push that right knee forward, and you'll try to keep that heaviness on the left inner heel and the left hip. And you take your inhales there.
Yeah. And in the right side, where do you put the weight on the medial?
So you try to keep a little bit of weight on this right side too, but majority of where you want to feel the heaviness is left hip, left inner heel, and then the left. You definitely don't want to lose base of the big toe, because the moment you lose the base of the big toe, that's when you start losing the medial hamstrings, which are really important for narrows and trying to like recapture rotation and
You mean the adductors or the medial hamstrings?
What was the question?
Is it so narrow lose the adductors in the left or the medial hamstring?
I don't know if, because I know that I know, like, especially because when I talked to Eric about this, I know both Bill and Eric, they don't like to like refer to the hamstrings as like, you know, medial hamstrings and whatnot. But I think it's definitely that left medial hamstring area that is something to work on. And that's where, like, if you start getting to like gym exercises and stuff, one of the ones they've had me work on is like the cross connect step up. Well, I don't know if it's called cross connect step up. I think this would be more.
Cross connect when you stand, right? And you climb on the box.
It's like a so you have a kettlebell in one hand, and you just kind of do it. It's almost like a, I can just show you here actually. Let's see. That's so you're can you see me?
You are standing on a box.
Yeah, I'm standing on a an exercise mat, like a folded exercise mat.
Okay.
And so what I do is the way they had me do it was I inhale, come down, and then I go to the other sides. I switched hands with the kettlebell, and then inhale, come down. And the kind of important part about this exercise, if you're really trying to target the medial hamstrings, is to make sure your knee is like actually bending right here. Because a lot of times what you want to do is like, you'll want to like orient to do it like this. You see how I'm kind of like turned to my side, and that's like kind of cheating to access that. So you kind of want more of it to happen through the bent knee.
Yes.
So if I'm doing like that, pretty much.
So you try to keep the sides equal without hiking.
Right. Yeah. No hiking. You're right. That's exactly right.
Nice. So going back to your story, you started to feel an improvement, and when did you know that you are healed? Was there a point in time that you said, "Wow, now I feel that I am on my way to recovery"?
I would say like,
What has improved? What did you feel that was improving in your daily function?
So yeah, so I just noticed like because my thumbs have been the thing for like the longest time that have been like extremely painful anytime I move them. So that was kind of like my goal. I knew that was more of like an end game goal, and I still haven't necessarily gotten like 100% the way there with that. But the main thing that I was super concerned about was the kind of like zingers I would get through the elbow. And I was really kind of happy that went away. I didn't have any more of that. And that made me feel like I could get back to like actually living life and not worrying about like every time I move my arm the wrong way, I'm gonna have a sharp pain that like, you know, I'll feel the results of for the next, you know, hour because it was so painful.
Nice.
And
So the symptoms of the weakness in the hand.
Oh yeah, that's gotten a lot better. Like, I don't ever notice now. Like, I think I tested my grip strength and it was 70 pounds. I've been rock climbing now, so like I can actually do like a lot. Like there's nothing really that like holds me back. Um, the only thing that may hold me back is like maybe like mobile games with my thumbs, or like sitting at the computer playing like a really fast-paced game or something. Probably be my only like true um
Do you still
things that I avoid.
do you still have pain in the wrist?
On the right side is a little been a little more stubborn, but the left side is getting like better. I would say like I've noticed an improvement like every couple weeks. Like I'm always like, oh, I feel like this is getting better. Like I think just yesterday I was sitting on my phone doing like some video editing and stuff because I just, I'm a creative person. I like to do stuff like that.
Mhm.
And I noticed I was like, why, I'm not having like the normal symptoms I have. Like normally I feel like if I'm in this position for like, because I was doing it for like an hour or two, it's like I feel fine. So I was really happy about that.
Like sitting and driving, you mean? Things like
Well,
this?
like sitting on my phone, kind of like, doing something like editing something, or like if I go on the computer and like edit something. But this was particularly yesterday when I was on my phone for a couple hours. I noticed I didn't have nearly like as much camping because I would avoid doing anything like that or getting into that because like if I was doing, music or whatever, I would avoid it because um it'd just be too painful. My hands would ache
Can I
the
ask,
next day.
you have inflammation in the hand? Did you feel that it is swollen or hot and red? Not red, but hot and a bit swollen, and like it is the range of motion is limited because of the
Uh-huh.
inflammation.
I had that. It was about a year ago. I think it was closer to like February of last year or February, March of last year. I had the swelling. That was when I was at my absolute worst. Like that was my worst symptoms that I'd ever had. Um, and it was like my whole hand would swell, pretty much. Like I actually had a photo of it where it was just kind of like, really big. And I would like if I'd fall asleep in the weird position, I'd wake up, my arm, yeah, would like not even bend really. I would have to wait for the nerve to like wake up almost. I had that whole swelling down the whole.
Also, did you have a tendency to cold hands and feet because of the
Oh,
POS?
I had the cold hands for sure, yeah. Like if I use the computer, I always noticed my hands were going cold. I remember with my girlfriend at the time, she'd always kind of mention it to me when I get off the computer. She'd be like, "Your hands are like super cold. You'd think they'd be like warm, if you've been
It's
gaming and
because
or
of circulation,
coding."
like the brachial plexus
Right,
is compressed and
right. So it was all compressed in there basically.
um,
Um, so yeah, it was, and my hands would just stay cold. I don't have that problem anymore though. It can be on there a few hours and whatever. I don't notice any kind of coldness or anything like that, luckily.
so your story is very inspiring because most people with TOS go for surgery where they cut
Hmm.
the first rib or they cut the parts of the scalenes and these kind of surgeries have long haul implications and like they
Right.
um, and who wants to have a surgery in this delicate area?
Yeah.
So
It's very invasive. Yeah.
what I mean, kudos for your spirit to go and keep searching and keep not giving up and keep searching for a solution. So what I'm asking you is if someone is watching you and he's in despair, like he's living with chronic pain, with TOS, or any other chronic pain in the body. What
Hmm.
what advice would you give him? What do you have any tip to
Hmm.
provide?
Yeah, one of the biggest tips I would say, like, cause I've definitely been there. Like, I remember that's why when I started the podcast and everything, I wanted to just kind of talk, get things off my chest. Um, you know, really you just kind of have to look at things from day to day. Like, you might have a day where you kind of, maybe you have like a really bad symptom, and you just kind of have to not let that spiral. You just kind of have to accept, like, okay, this is going to happen occasionally, but as long as I keep doing the things that are going to make me better each day, then I'm going to see these improvements. And while, like, you know um in a month or something, you may still look back and be like, oh, I still have this and that. If you just keep going and just keep you know
Yeah.
going through all those hoops, and you just keep improving things, it'll only just be that incline. Because I think a lot of people, um, but maybe it gets to like 3 or 4 months, and they've tried something, um, they might get to the point where they're like, I didn't see the improvements that I wanted. Maybe this isn't going to work, and maybe I just need to like resort to doing something else. Um, but for me, I've made it like a lifestyle, really. Like, if I'm watching like a TV show or something, maybe I'll do a breathing exercise here and there. And while eventually it'd be nice to kind of get away from doing that as much as I do, I mean, I feel like I'm pretty happy. I can go out and do things and have fun. And, for me to just spend maybe 30 minutes doing some of these therapy exercises every day, it's um, not like a huge, difficult thing to do. It's just that motivation, like trying to keep going, and like telling yourself that it's benefiting you. Because the moment you start to like kind of doubt, and you're just kind of like, oh, like, I'm stuck here, like there's nothing that's gonna help. Those are the moments where like, you may like stop doing things, and then kind of get into this funk, almost, I guess you could say. Which, I was no stranger to last summer, when I really wasn't seeing any results.
Uh-huh. This is exactly what I was referring to, the inner self-talk, the voices in our head when you feel stuck, when you feel frustrated, when you don't feel that this exercise or another exercise is that they have a big impact at that time. So
Right.
many people would quit and move on to another modality, maybe
Right. Yeah.
an osteopath or a chiropractor or dry needling or nutrition or homeopathy, whatever.
Right.
I am interested in, this is another question, in your inner self-talk, when you had the pain and the frustration, and actually, what was your relationship with pain, with chronic pain? Because you lived with it, even if it was not 24/7, but once you use the
Mhm.
hands and the upper limb. Um,
Yeah, so it's definitely, kind of tough to, because it's something that keeps you away from things that you love to do, right? So it's like, it's tough to have any kind of healthy relationship with something that's so, limiting, I guess you could say. Um, but what I really had to do was just kind of, you know, find those limitations to, what causes pain. It's like, how can I like slowly increase the amount of time I can do the things I enjoy. And when it comes to like how I look at pain, um I just see it as like, and kind of like an improve like it's a way to gauge your improvement in terms of your body. Because if you're having less and less pain over maybe the course of an activity, um that's a way for you to measure that. Because like, while that might not be a number that somebody can look at, it's something that you can subjectively, you know look
hmm.
at over time. And even if you do have like maybe a bad day or something, you don't want to look at like the past maybe few weeks that were good and say, well, maybe you want to say this is just a one-off thing, and because a lot of times it is. Um, and then there's always, that's always a chance to kind of look at different things, maybe what caused it or whatever else, but you don't want to get too caught up into that. You just kind of want to stay on that steady path of, doing the things that have made you feel better, and just kind of reinforcing those different movement patterns that help. And yeah, I mean,
It's
pain
about,
has it, it was a pretty big part of my life for a while, but I think it's just kind of learning. It is a little bit of like an acceptance to a degree, but almost kind of like you're just trying to lower that threshold every maybe month you see an improvement, like, and you kind of point to that um, based on whatever approach you're trying to follow.
yeah, I'm intrigued. And you also opened this website, like channeled the you channeled the pain and the frustration into something creative and solution oriented, not
Hmm.
just sinking in the despair.
Right. Yeah. I wanted to kind of like because I thought if computer programming was like my ultimate hobby, like I love doing that, like creating. I love to create like games and just anything with programming I love to do. I was like, if I want to get back to that being my passion, it's not so bad for me to help some people and have this as my passion for now. And maybe I can learn something and apply it to the future, and like, because I've always wanted to know more about, fitness and gym exercises and whatnot. And maybe even just about anatomy. And so to me, it was just a learning opportunity that I saw. And I was like, maybe this is the path that I'm kind of being pushed down. I don't know if, some people are spiritual or, um, and whatnot, but like, I just saw it as like, maybe this is my mission to kind of get through this and like help other people. And then I can get back to doing a lot of the other things that I really enjoy.
Beautiful. And can you say something about dancing? Because you told me that dancing was another layer on the rehab exercises
Hmm.
helped you.
Yeah, that's something I've been getting into because I've also heard other people like really talk about dancing as kind of helping. I don't think it's necessarily something that you would do as like, step one. Like I do think there's a lot of like, supine exercises and stuff that will kind of help you get to that point. But I think once you get to maybe, you get to that point where you can do a lot of more like standing stuff and you're not compensating as much and you're kind of starting to restore that normal breathing. I think it's really helpful to like, go out and have fun and do things that um, aren't just like, maybe a repetitive activity. Maybe it's something where you're just, you're dancing and moving and um, you're
Yeah.
trying all kinds of different movements. And I know that Neil Hallinan, he gets really into the specifics with PRI. Um, about like why the brain interacts with music and what it does to all these different inputs, like what that does to movement and how that helps coordination. Um, so I think that's pretty interesting to me. And I think it's just another, I don't think it's a replacement for therapy, but I think it's definitely something you can layer on top once you get to a certain point
Also
that
in
will help.
biochemistry of things, when you do aerobic exercise, when the body releases materials which are antidotes to TNF alpha, to inflammatory markers in the blood. Like it reduces the markers, the interleukins, which are creating the swelling and the symptoms
Mhm.
of inflammation. But what you said about in another level of psychological, spiritual, coordination-wise, music
Mhm.
is another layer of. I
Right.
wonder also what is your take on visualization techniques, like visualizing yourself without pain, taking yourself to a good future, to your future self
Right.
when you are free and unbound
Mhm.
of your.
Right, yeah, exactly. So, yeah, I've always had kind of this interest, and because I think there's very like there's all these communities where they're very either or, where they're like it's all mind body or it's all physical, and I've loved kind of like a combination where it's like you do the things that are biomechanically really good for you, and then you kind of almost try to implement meditation into that. So kind of the same processes you go through if you're doing meditation, but you do it in a way where you're implementing something your body really needs in that moment. So it's kind of like a two birds with one stone kind of
Yeah.
thing. You're taking the best of both worlds. Like I never want to like subscribe to like this is the best thing because I want to be able to implement as many things as possible and come at it from all sides, you know.
Mhm.
Um, so yeah, I've definitely, you know, put on maybe like a YouTube video or something like meditation and just kind of done my exercises that way, and that's been really helpful as well.
But by the way, doing the exercise with intention and with awareness and paying the fine-tuned attention to the, as you said, like expanding the back and not focusing on the on shoving air to the front.
Right. Yeah.
Meditation by itself, it's awareness,
Right.
movement. Moshe Feld.
Right. And
Mhm.
awareness is always the first kind of step too, is even just being aware of something can really help. And just
Last,
um
last question to you regarding awareness. It can be a double-edged sword sometimes.
oh yeah, for sure. There's certain times when awareness becomes really bad. So like there were times when I would, you know, I'd go to work and I would focus on like my breathing too much. I was like, okay, like I'm constantly just thinking about, oh, you know, I gotta expand A to P and like, you know, front the back of the rib cage. And it just became like, I was like, I just gotta stop focusing on this. Like just, you know, forget about this. The time that matters is when I'm really in like when I'm really doing exercises, and that's the time where I can focus on that because I'm gonna see the results of those exercises throughout the day anyway. I don't have to do like some special posture cue that's going to keep
Yeah.
me because the posture cue is the exercise. It's the cue to the brain. This is something I'm working towards. And
Yes.
so throughout the rest of the day, you will see those effects instead of like
Yeah.
jamming yourself, you know.
It will be integrated and assimilated in the body subconsciously, subliminally.
Right, exactly. Yep.
So now when you walk, do you pay attention to the to your gait cycle where the hip is like the proprioception where the hip is, where the sternum is, where the clavicle is, where if you do the internal rotation fully or you orient, do you pay attention to this stuff or uh,
So
because
there's
this can create also kind of body dysmorphia. You feel
right. I
um,
know exactly what you mean.
you feel flawed all the time.
Uh-huh. Right. And I think what you have to understand is that like um and you get into like something more dynamic like walking, you're never going to be able to do walking perfectly. There's not even such thing as like a perfect walk, right? So you just kind of like when you go into like those exercises like the hip shift, those are things that you're making some different brain connections where you shouldn't have to focus on those things when you walk. They should just come naturally. um, like, you know, you can occasionally maybe, you know, once or twice be like, hey, you know, am I having like arm swing or something? But it shouldn't be something that you're constantly like looking at because the more you're just kind of enjoying having fun doing this is more of like a um, something to, you know, because a lot of people they go walking just to kind of experience the surroundings and relax. I think that is always going to be more beneficial because it's such a dynamic movement than if you were trying to like um, do kind of these almost static cues into a dynamic exercise, right? Because you're trying to like time everything right, where it's like that can be good in like dancing, but it's like walking is really just a one-way rotational thing that kind of it just keeps, or not one way, but you keep rotating, back and forth. It's not really this um, overly complex thing, so you don't want to over focus and make it more complicated than it needs to be, I guess.
It should be like what is without too much thinking about it, you think?
Yeah, like if you go dancing or something somewhere, yeah, you'll think a little bit about, what you're gonna do, but you're not like hyper focused, you're not just like, oh, I've got to get this arm in the right position for this and stuff. Like you're kind of just having fun with it, you're just kind of relaxing and like it should that's how it should be. It'd be like you're having a good time more so than it's like um getting down that road of like body dysmorphia of like, oh, I can't do this right.
Yeah.
Um,
Because part of the chronic pain is a personality of a striving person who strives for, as you said, the perfect movement, ideal movement. If you know, there is the method, not a method, he wrote books about it, Dr. John Sarno.
yes, I thought you were gonna mention him. I thought that's the road you're going down. Yeah. I've read Dr. Sarno's stuff. I like a lot of what he like talks about. I think the biggest obviously like place where we kind of disagree is just that like he thinks the physical shouldn't be addressed, and I think
Mhm.
it's good to have everything.
Yes,
So
I agree.
I like a lot of what he says about like being a perfectionist. I think that can be very true to some degree, definitely.
Yeah,
Um,
the striving personality, the end gaining, like someone who I will do it by hook and by crook, and it must be perfect, it must be.
right.
I'm
And I feel like
the never
it's very difficult
when
not to, yeah.
you are never enough. When someone thinks he's never enough, then it creates it's a never enoughness.
Right. Right. I think you almost have to think about it as like learning, kind of like learning a new skill versus like, you know, instead of thinking I can't do this right, you just think of every time I do this, I'm gonna get better at it, like if you're doing like an exercise. So and that's how it is from what I've noticed. Like there's exercises where I was completely unable to do them at first. But what Eric told me is like just stay open to this exercise. You may not be good at it right now, but further down the line, if you just try it maybe once or twice every day, um, eventually you'll start noticing those improvements. And that's like even if you're like learning a sport or doing something, you're just going to keep approaching the goal basically, which is you being able to do that and not like it should won't have to like overcome your thoughts as something where you're just like or like you're just constantly thinking about I have to do this perfect because that'll come with time, with you just doing the repetitions.
It's a lot about the cues, isn't it? When you want to perfect.
Cues, yeah, and so there's like you said that double-edged sword because cues are very helpful, and then there is times where you're like, am I doing this cue right? Like is this um am I really having like a heavy hip in this moment on this exercise or something, or am I just thinking I am or something? So you have to like kind of just tell yourself, okay, it's fine, like you don't have to get too caught up in this as long as you're doing it and you're feeling a little better. Every time you do it, you might notice something, but you don't have to hyper focus on it.
So Zachary, nowadays, when you are better, are you helping people with TOS, like coaching them, or I mean, besides the beautiful website that you have, and I love it because it's simple. It's not
Hmm. No,
with
thank you.
multimedia. I love the simplicity, how you
Hmm.
organize the material there and
Hmm.
keep it.
Yeah. Um, I have people that in my Discord who I do free. I do all free because I don't have a medical degree or anything, so I just talk to them and like they tell me kind of what they're going through, and then I try to like change my approach based on kind of what they're dealing with. And I think because a lot of these people, they're really just kind of they need something that's going to point them in the right direction. So that's mostly what I do is I just kind of point them in the right direction. Like we did have an individual who he had a hip problem they'd had since he was really young. Um, and so I just kind of point him, hey, maybe it's the hip that's it's causing some of this pain with the TOS that he was having. So he went and he like went and found some program. I didn't, tell him about this program or anything. He went and found a hip program. He followed it and he said, I'm fine now. He said, I have no pain, no TOS. It's like, he said, it's like awesome. Like he's back to living his life. Um, so there's these different connections you could find in the body where someone might think a hip is, has nothing to do with TOS, or maybe, they might think it's completely unrelated and then they end up fixing it. And there's this chain reaction that kind of starts to occur and they start to feel a lot better. So,
I live in Israel, and in Hebrew we have a saying: if you are sick, don't consult a doctor, consult with another sick person. He will give you a better advice many times.
oh, that's really good. Yeah.
Because if someone with a TOS would, let's say carpal tunnel, would go to a doctor, to a hand surgeon, and the hand surgeon would not even, because the expertise now is so narrow.
Right.
He
They're
will
very localized.
he will not even think of he would think that this is local, and let alone he would never suspect it would come from the hip.
Right. So I was talking about that with a patient, because, I work with the Department of Labor, because she's having hand symptoms and she was talking about, well, I also have this really bad hip pain. Um, and so I was like, we got into that conversation talking about different like doctors, how they're all specialized. And I was like, yeah, like most shoulder doctors, it's like they don't even know what a hip is, it's like they're just like, so, how could they ever know what influence the hip really has on the shoulder if they're so localized in this one area? They
Exactly.
they're unable to see what the foundation is doing to
Yeah.
um the upper, body. So like it's almost like Jenga. If you were only zoomed in on like 3 blocks and you're wondering why is the tower like kind of leaning this way, you'd never be able to know because you weren't looking at the
Sure.
bottom of the Jenga tower.
And you know what? It's you mentioned breathing. Beneath all these misalignments of this complex system, there is the breathing, and I think beneath the breathing lies emotions,
Oh
which
yeah.
which affect the pattern of breathing, and so we can always dig deeper and deeper. But from a physician, we would expect that he will see the whole physical structure, not just the focal point of the hand or the. Last question:
Mhm.
would you say that people with TOS, from your experience, and you meet people with TOS in the Discord,
Mhm.
would you say that there is something common to them, maybe more anxious people, or that they have a rectus strategy which is very dominant?
Yeah, so a lot of what I see are like sometimes people who they try really, really hard at certain things. Like, like we have a lot of people who they went into doing like weightlifting and they're people who sometimes are even people like me that they're like problem solvers. And they just, they want to do like, maybe something like bench press or something that's very like fun, but they're trying to improve their body in these different ways. Um, and so I think it becomes very disheartening when they start to notice, these different symptoms and things popping up.
Yeah.
are not obviously in the direction of their goal. And so that I think is one of the huge spirals that I see kind of again and again, is people who they're trying to make some kind of improvement in their life, and they ended up like having this kind of down, you
Sure.
know, in this downwards trajectory. But as far as like similarities go, I've seen pretty much everything. I mean, there can be like office workers to musicians, um, to just like people, like I said, just weightlifters. Um, but I do notice a lot of these people, you know, I can't like say, yeah, all these people are 100% perfectionists, like
Yeah.
that's what they are. I feel like it'd be hard for me to jump and make that conclusion. Um, but there's definitely, and maybe that's just the result of what chronic pain is like, because it does make you want to find that solution. And
Uh-huh.
maybe that's kind of what can make someone lean towards being a perfectionist, because they're trying to find that solution. They want something that's going to fix their problems, which makes sense. So I always try to look at like, both sides, like what's influencing what here. And
But
so,
if you look at the physical layer, let's stay in the physical sphere. Would you say that so TOS basically is a compression? They
yeah,
would you say that and they would have a down pump handle? Am I right? So
yeah. So
do
they would.
would you see a common denominator of a strong rectus abdominis overactivity?
Yeah, so pretty much it's funny you mentioned this, because we have a massage therapist that we work with at my clinic. And I told her, because a lot of people, they'll come with tight pecs, and they'll come in with like a tight upper trap or something. I said, well, have you looked at the rectus abs? And so she didn't start looking at him until I said that, and then she's like, oh wow, like this areas are like usually really tight on people who have the tight pecs as well. So it's like you can see that kind of influence all the way from the lower body as it kind of comes up into causing, the breathing, um, different breathing compressive strategies.
So did you use also manual manipulations to open your pecs, your upper traps? Is it necessary in your opinion to?
I don't know. I think maybe if there's situations where someone's really, really jammed up and they just need, something that's gonna help get them in the right direction, and maybe they aren't able to do that by themselves. I definitely think there's those instances exist, but then I think they should be followed up like very quickly with like an exercise.
Yeah, like
Usually that's something they can do on top of that to improve.
what if only, last question really, what if only one side of the rectus is more active than the other? Like you mentioned, narrows have many times more tendency to have the right rectus more hypertonic than the left. They might have
Mhm.
also here, but in the right they are really compressed.
Right, and that's where you get like your hip shift exercises, where you can first do it in like hook line, and you can go to like a wall set, and just kind of like get that shift where you're kind of releasing that tension and the rectus abs, and on that right side. So you're pushing, like you're creating a rotation to the left, because what's happened is you're rotated to the right
Yes.
in those circumstances.
So it's like you make an offset with the right side.
Right. It's like you're kind of using the other side against itself, so, or against the other side.
Mhm. Wow. Zachary, I'm very happy that you have been here and shared of your experience and insights. I'm really, really grateful.
Yeah,
And
I'm glad to be on and talk.
we wish you happiness and health and joy. Thank you.
You as well. Thank you.